Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC. It's time to do another radio review. I love doing RC radio reviews. I don't really know why, but they're super fun. I think it's just because every RC radio is totally different. Even though they do kind of the same basic things, just the layout, the controls, everything is always different. And what we're reviewing today is the Flysky FS-G7P, brand new radio from Flysky. And it sells for about 70 bucks. Got mine from Banggood. Special shout out to them for sending this out for review. The great thing about Banggood is they don't really care what you say in your videos. So I like having that freedom to basically talk about the radio and just give you my honest opinion. And so that is excellent. So here's the radio itself. Came out, I think, about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. And I've been testing it, driving it, trying it in a lot of different environments. I actually put this in my two-wheel drive race buggy, my Yokomo YZ2. Also tested it back-to-back with an FSGT5, and then also kind of my reference radio, the Sanwa MT44, which is like my main race radio. So I just like to understand the radio, how does it perform, all that good stuff. So we're going to give a rating in 9 different categories, I think. So a little bit different than some of my other reviews, but 9 different categories, giving you a rating from 1 to 5 stars. And the rating is basically based on an average. So competitors to this are going to be like the Flysky FSGT5, which actually sells for like $85 or so. So a little bit pricier than this and a little bit older now. It's been out, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, something like that. So it's not clear if this is a replacement for that radio or if it's just a different model within the lineup, but it's cheaper but has more functionality, so a little bit unclear there. Also, competitors to this are going to be the Futaba 3PV, which I have a review on, a really old video of mine, but yeah, it's been out for a long time. That also sells for a little over 100 bucks. The Sanwa MX6, which I review on, and then you know, I think something like the Spectrum DX5C has been priced out of this price range, so that is like about 200 bucks now, and this is 70 bucks. So I don't really consider them to be equals, at least price-wise, but this does have a lot of functionality, and I think that's pretty cool. And so yeah, we're gonna get into the review. First off, we're going to be talking about the features, and this is a 7-channel radio. It's also got two-way telemetry, so you can hook up iBus or S-Bus sensors, get feedback, get telemetry information out of the box. It does come with this Flysky FS-R7P receiver I've got here in my Nitro buggy, but yeah, it's a 7-channel receiver. You know, as you would expect, has the 7 channels. It has a bind button. It also has the iBus and a battery voltage plug. So a lot of different sensors, a lot of different things you can monitor, as well as the additional 7 channels you can actually control. So really rich feature set. In addition to that telemetry, it also has a really nice display, dot matrix display, LCD display. It is also backlit, which is really nice. I don't think any other radio in this class is backlit, so that's pretty awesome. It does have programmable switches as well, so you got a push button switch up here, you got a variable rate dial here, you've kind of got a 4-way joystick here to control the trims, and then you have another variable rate dial down here, another trim left right button, and then a 3-way switch over here and a push button here by your thumb. So a lot of controls, a lot of switches. I do like that it does have variable rate dials in addition to like single button presses and push button presses, so that's pretty cool. In addition to programmable switches, got 20 model memory. You can do mixing as well, so if you want to combine individual channels and get, you know, sort of one control, maybe steering, you got 4-wheel steering or something, 2 servos controlling front and rear wheels, you can mix those together. And then finally, you got updatable firmware, and you can actually plug this into your computer and use it as like a VR controller. So if you've got some sort of RC racing game or something, you can use this as a controller, so that's pretty cool. Downsides, it has no SVC or ABS, at least with the receiver that comes out of the box. I think in the future they're going to provide other receivers, although I really was not able to find any other receivers out there that work with this radio. It does use the ANT protocol, which I think they used in some of their earlier radios, the FS-4GP or something like that. But most of their stuff is using AF-HDS or AF-HDS2, so this receiver is not really going to work with most of your other Flysky radios if you have any, so a little bit weird, but yeah, no SVC, and I don't think there's any ABS as well. So some other radios out there like Futaba, I believe, has ABS, so the Flysky FS-G7P has SVC, which is stability control. So a little weird they didn't include it out of the box, but this is a little bit more of a budget radio, so I guess I'm not surprised. But in the feature category, I'm going to give it 5 stars. I do think it is best in class, the best display, programmable switches and controls, which no other radio has. Next up is design and construction, and it's a pretty basic plastic radio. It is styled a lot after, I think, a Futaba 4PX. Styling wise, with kind of that vertical display, the little joystick here, it does look similar to a Futaba to me. It does look kind of like a cheap knockoff of that radio, but not the worst radio to sort of emulate. And you know, it does have sort of this carbon fiber look. Plastics are okay. You know, some of the switches and dials feel a little cheap. They look a little cheap. You know, they're not the highest quality thing, but you know, overall I think construction, it is fine, is average. It does have the nice angled display, which is awesome. Trigger feels good, wheel feels good, not much slop. It's actually one of the better feeling wheels. Although the one thing I dislike, it does come with a hard plastic wheel. I put a little foam grip over it because the hard plastic wheel is terrible. And even with this foam, it's not the best because the plastic wheel is kind of tapered, so it doesn't fit like totally right. But yeah, this is really the only main complaint I have about the design and construction is that hard plastic wheel. That's pretty terrible, and pretty much every other radio does have a foam wheel, so I would wish they would address that. But yeah, in design construction category, I'm gonna give it 3 stars. Overall, you know, the plastics and stuff are about average. Not the highest quality thing, not the worst quality thing. It is totally fine, but that wheel is a downgrade. Display is an upgrade, so overall I think I'm gonna give it an average score of 3 stars. Okay, moving on to the display and menu system. It does have that giant LCD display. We'll kind of look at it real quick. It shows you the model and the model name it's on, the voltage of the radio or transmitter. It does show you the steering trims over here on the right, and then kind of the steering and throttle positions as you pull or release the trigger. It does have the lap timer here, still rate, what it's set to, throttle percentage, and brake rate. So all your dual rates here on the bottom. Pushing up, it actually again shows you the channel monitoring, so as you turn the steering or adjust the channels, it kind of shows you what the live positions of those are. And then if you push down, it shows you all the telemetry type stuff. So transmitter voltage, it shows you 5.1 volts. If I turn on my car here, it does show you the additional information. So receiver voltage is 6.6. BVD is a battery voltage detection. So in addition to the receiver voltage, you can actually hook up an external battery voltage meter, and then shows you the signal and the noise of that. So pretty cool. Even shows you a little bar graph of how the communication is actually on this radio. So pretty nice. Moving up and down, you know, there are other additional feedback. So I don't really know what all those means. Those are electrical engineering type terms or something, but yeah, pretty cool to do that. And then if you push down on the button, I'm sorry, move to the right. It does have these icons over here on the left. So I guess the stack of squares is basically all your normal settings, servo reversing, endpoint adjustment, sub trim, dual rate, curve, and it does have SVC, but the receiver that this thing comes with, you know, does not support SVC. So I guess some other receivers out there will support it. All your additional channels. Mixing, like I mentioned, you can mix multiple channels together. Lap timer, which is kind of cool. You can actually, you know, keep track of additional lights, start and stop the timers. Switch assign, which is the programmable switches, like I mentioned. So there are 3 different types of switches: a knob switch, a knob dial, like a variable rate dial, a switch, and then this trim toggle up here on the top where you can go up, down, left, right, or push the button. So these are all programmable, so you can have each of these control whatever type of functionality you want, which is really cool. Not too many radios in this price range have that. And then all your receiver settings, you can set failsafe, which is super easy on this radio as compared to most radios. Most radios, you gotta set it within the receiver. On this, you actually set it in the radio, and it, you know, stores it into the receiver, which is pretty cool. Range test, sensor, all that stuff. Model, you know, again, you can select which model. Sorry, we're not going to do that because we have a radio hooked up. So, but yeah, you can copy the models. I think you can actually even download it to your PC. into the Flysky app, so you can save and load models from one radio to another. Then all your calibration, the firmware update, all your normal system type settings. And then I think there's even a manual, so you got a QR code if you want to look at the manual. The manual that comes in the box is pretty poor, doesn't really explain a whole lot, so I would look at this, although this manual still doesn't explain everything, but it is available, and then you can get some information about the radio itself. So yeah, those are all the menu options. It uses this 4-way joystick. Not the easiest thing to use. I do feel like Flysky menus in general are not 100% like logical. Sometimes you push a button to select something you push to the right to select something. Sometimes even though you're in like a menu system, you know, I think like endpoint adjustment, you think to go right, you would actually push right, but you actually got to push down, and then to go back, you have to actually push up. And then if you push left, it actually backs out of the menu. So select it, you know, you would think you hit the button, that doesn't actually work. You have to push right. So a little bit weird. The other thing is if you do reverse the servos, actually the left-right does not reverse, so they end up being backwards. So if you flip your servo, for example, like in this nitro buggy, actually had the servo reversed in the controls. So to adjust the right steering endpoint, I actually have to adjust the left one, and adjust the left one, I actually have to adjust the right one. So that's kind of annoying. Same thing on the brake and forward, because I have a throttle servo in this. Those are also reversed. So just something, you know, I wish Flysky would address. They don't do that on any of their radios, so not unusual for Flysky, but I don't think any of their radios are like that, so I wish they would fix that. So yeah, display and menu system, I do think it's above average. I mean, it is a 4 because the display is so nice. Menu is not the greatest thing, but it does have those icons. Reasonably logical and not too hard to use, so I do give it above average score for that. Backlit display, so pretty nice overall, above average, 4 stars in the display and menu category. To me, the most important thing with the radio is it actually has to control the car properly. So I'm not just talking about latency. You know, everyone fixates on latency numbers, and you know that is important, and it is, you know, nice to have a low latency radio. But in addition to that, you need the correct precision, you need the correct linearity in the controls. You need to not have any dead spots. And Flysky, in my experience, has not always been the best at this. I do have a Flysky FS-GT3C, I have a Flysky FS-GT5, I do have a Flysky Noble as well. So I'm very familiar with all the Flysky radios. They all exhibit some sort of weird control issues, you know, on every single radio I've used. This one actually, I would say, is one of the best. Not too many. I didn't really detect any dead spots on this. Like I mentioned, I did put this in my carpet race buggy. So that is a really high performance environment where the radio, transmitter, controls all have to be perfect. Latency seemed pretty good. I would say this thing actually, no dead spots. Linear is pretty close. I did have to add about 3 expo onto the steering to get it quite completely linear. Like Futaba, Spectrum, Samwals, those are all completely linear radios. This is not 100% linear. There is a little bit of a weird curve to the steering, and so I did have to add a little expo to fix that. It's not 100% correct, but it is pretty close, and I think you'll find that that will help your steering a little bit. Throttle linearity, hard for me to measure because I use this in my race radio, race vehicle, which is a 17.5 turn 2-wheel drive buggy. So on those things, you're pretty much always at full throttle or full brake. So hard to test the throttle linearity, but it seemed fine to me. So yeah, control wise, I'd say it's kind of average. Definitely worse radios out there. I did test this back-to-back with my Flysky FS-GT5, and I think that other radio is worse. This is definitely better than GT5. I did find it performed better, but not as good as some of the other radios out there. I think the Samwall may be a little bit slower, but a little more linear. I think the Spectrum, again, performance-wise, probably close, maybe a little bit slower, but again, it is more linear. So performance-wise, there are some advantages. I think it's fairly fast, actually. I ran it in both one-way and two-way mode. One-way, I think, is actually pretty quick. No issues with the latency. Precision seemed pretty clear. Linear, not 100% there, but pretty close and pretty good overall. I think this is actually a halfway decent race radio. You know, compared to some of the other under $100 radios out there, this is probably the best performing of those. But compared to the other major brands, I don't think it's the best out there. So I'm going to give it an average rating in the performance category. 3 stars. You know, okay. Some parts it's good, some parts it's bad. The radio feels pretty good in the hand. I do like the angle of the grip. It feels correct to me. Something like a Futaba actually feels pretty poor. Spectrum feels pretty good with the texturized grip. This has kind of that carbon look thing, which is not completely flat and smooth, but it's not a nice rubberized textured grip. So it's an okay grip, you know, definitely okay, not terrible. Wheel is pretty poor. It does need some sort of foam wheel or something. The Noble NB4 actually wheel does bolt onto it, although it does basically scoot out the wheel like another, I don't know, 4 or 5 millimeters, so it sticks out kind of far. It looks kind of weird. It does fit. I am looking at other alternative radios. Now, some reviews of this radio did show kind of a pre-production model of this where they include some other accessories like a foam wheel, but pretty much every radio I think that you can actually buy on the market does not come with that foam wheel, so I'm not sure if that will get released later or what, but yeah, pretty much everything you'll buy will come with the hard plastic wheel, so kind of disappointing that they don't actually carry that or stock that. But yeah, control-wise, the throttle trigger feels totally fine. You know, it feels pretty good. I think spring tension is not too stiff or not too soft or anything. Steering wheel, again, feels pretty good. You know, good spring tension, not too stiff, not too hard, not too much slop. Really the downsides of this thing, I wish they did have some trim switches here around the wheel like most radios. It has this 4-way joystick, which I find really annoying to use. I really dislike this thing, so I did not use that for trim. I actually use this trim button here for steering trim, and then I use this variable rate dial actually for throttle trim. It's pretty useful actually on a nitro vehicle where sometimes you want to increase the idle by adjusting the throttle trim. Having that dial I think is really cool. Not a lot of radios actually have variable rate dials with this computerized system, so I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, this joystick here for the menu system, again, it's sort of like a convex toggle switch or whatever, joystick or whatever, so your button kind of tends to slide off this. It feels like pretty flimsy. It feels like it's going to break. Not the greatest thing. In the control category, I'm going to give it 3 stars. Throttle's fine. I like a lot of these dials and switches and stuff. I think those are great. Wheel sucks. The menu toggle switch sucks. The trim joystick also sucks. So in the control guide, I'm going to give it an average score, 3 stars. Some parts of it are really nice, some parts of it are kind of poor. So overall, I think it gets an average rating. If you go to the Flysky website, it does show you a bunch of different ANT protocol receivers. I couldn't find that any of those are actually sold, so as far as I know, you can only get the FSG7P at the time of this video, but it is a pretty good receiver. It's fairly inexpensive. It's 22 bucks. It's 7 channels. It does have a bind button. It also has a bind plug if you want to use that instead for some reason. It does have an antenna, so overall I think the receiver is, you know, pretty good. It's cheap, fully functional. I guess there are going to be some that have SVC support, so I don't really know if those are available yet or how you get one of those, but this receiver is what I'm going to base this rating on. I'm going to give it 4 stars. Somewhat large, and I wish they made an antenna-less version, but it is full function. It does have that bind button. It is fairly cheap, so definitely above average receiver. I'm going to give it 4 stars. Battery-wise, the FSG7P uses 4 AA's as you would expect with, you know, pretty much any radio nowadays. It does have a 2-prong plug, so if you do have a battery pack that will actually fit in here, you could use it. I don't know if they actually make a battery that will fit in here. I'm just using AA's. I did have one issue, which is that one of these little switches or tags here for the plus plug did not stick out far enough. So these Amazon batteries have kind of a flat profile on the positive side as opposed to like a AA, which has a fairly long positive plug here. So it did not fit. I ended up having to just add a little solder here onto that to make it, you know, build up a little bit better and stick out a little bit to basically give it a better connection there. So that was the only real complaint I had. Battery compartment wise, you know, I give it an average score, 3 stars. I'm not sure if there will actually be a battery tray that fits. I don't think you can actually pull these things out, so you cannot remove this battery tray, and I don't know what batteries will fit in there, but yeah, if you can find one that'll fit and plug in there, you know, that's kind of a nice feature that you can actually use like a Life or LiPo battery. But yeah, out of the box, AA's, it's totally fine. I'm gonna give it 3 stars in the battery category. And yeah, like you can see, that little connection is still not the best, and can reset itself. So yeah, I don't know if that's just a quality control thing or with something with my radio, but yeah, something I kind of noticed and was a little annoying. The manual that comes with the radio is pretty minimal. I guess it's really a quick start guide. Here, just a few pages in Chinese here, and then English here on the back. Just kind of shows you what everything is. Like I mentioned, you do have that QR code in the radio itself, so you can look it up online. But even that does not really explain everything. It doesn't really explain how iBus works or PWM or all these different protocols. It doesn't really explain stereo frequency or anything like that. So I do feel like Flysky needs to work on their manuals a little bit better. And their English is actually better, so at least it's intelligible. But I do feel like they do need to explain their features because there are a lot of features in this radio. And WTF-RC as another channel out there, I think he focuses a lot on Flysky radios, has a lot of videos about this guy in particular. So if you want to know more about that, that's probably the best source to actually understand all the capabilities of this radio, including things like the servo. So with the servo selection, I was actually running this thing in digital mode, which is, you know, what I guess most radios are going to be used with your RC car. But for example, this HPI Racing buggy I got here, it's got these slow analog servos. It couldn't handle the digital signal. I think that's at like 380 hertz. Analog, I believe, is at 60 hertz or something like that. So I did actually have to switch to analog because I couldn't get it to actually work with these servos. So things like that would be nice if they explained. I can't remember any other radio outside of Flysky that actually has adjustable servo frequencies. So that's kind of a neat feature, but it's not really well explained in any sort of documentation. And since it's kind of an unusual feature, it's not something you're going to find in other radios out there. So I wish they would have spent a little more time explaining that. So in the manual category, I'm going to give it 1 star actually. The manual that comes with it, pretty poor. The one online is better, but still does not explain everything. And the fact that you kind of have to look it up is, I think, a downside to this radio. And the last category is the value at 70 bucks. This is a fantastic value. There is no other radio out there in that price range that is anywhere close to the amount of functionality, the quality, precision. Actually, the controls are even decent. 7 channels. Really, really nice radio for the money. Everything even somewhat in this class, like the 3PD or the Stanwell MX6, are going to be more expensive. Even the FS-GT5 is more expensive. So kind of absurd that you get this much radio in that lower value. I guess this thing's complaining. I'm not actually on. But yeah, I think that's pretty amazing. And I do think this is best in class. I'm going to give it 5 stars in the value category. Like, even the FS-GT5 costs more, has way less features, much lower quality radio. So I'm really impressed with how much they're able to sell this thing for. So final thoughts on the Flysky FS-G7P. Great radio. Really the only downsides to this radio is that it's not compatible with the other Flysky radios out there. They switched to this ANT protocol. I don't know if it's supposed to be better or faster or what, but it seems to work well. Performance is excellent. The feature is fully rich. The price is amazing as well. Under you know, 100 bucks. I think this is pretty much the best radio you can buy. There's no other radio that pretty much touches this in this price range. No major complaints other than the steering wheel. If they fix that, I would say this is like a really, really awesome radio. But that does affect the controls. That does affect you know, how it actually feels, how it actually drives. You know, I use this actually as my primary nitro radio for a couple of reasons. One is that it's got the variable rate dial, so really nice to be able to adjust the throttle trim at a moment's notice. Get set exactly how you want and not have to fiddle with switches and stuff like that. I think that's great about this radio. It's also not particularly expensive. So for like RTR nitro vehicle, I think this is perfect. You know, if you're bashing with this RC car, getting nitro all over your hands, getting oil and stuff all over your radio, you're not going to really complain too much or worry too much about it because it's not that expensive a radio. If you have like a super high-end $300 radio, which you kind of have to spend to get some of these similar features, and like a Spectrum, you know, you got to spend at least $200. You don't really want to get nitro crap all over your radio, and so this is kind of excellent from that perspective. And then, you know, the price, 70 bucks is amazing. I do think it's tons of bang for the buck. Good performer. You know, really no major complaints about this radio. If you're thinking about getting one of these, if you're looking to move up from like an RTR radio, this is probably the best choice, especially for a nitro vehicle. There's no other radio that I think is as good in that application. Obviously, you're getting the receiver voltage, so you know when your receiver battery is dying. Having that telemetry feedback is invaluable for nitro. So whether you want nitro, whether you want electric, whether you're just trying to upgrade from a basic radio, whether you want one radio that can control multiple vehicles, cheap receivers as well. So excellent choice. One of the best radios I've seen actually this year. And so yeah, excellent radio. So those are my thoughts on the Flysky FS-G7P. We'll have a link in the description below where you can pick up one of these. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about this radio. Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe, add notification buttons, and look for more reviews soon. Thanks for watching.